December 27th, 2023. Wow, the year is just about over, isn't it? Well, I want to get into issue tonight about the Donald Trump's appeal the, to the appellate court, and I guess we're also talking about now Jack Smith's attempt to go around the appellate court and try to get the Supreme Court to decide it preemptively in order to speed things up. And it's been generally looked at, I guess, as a win for Trump that the Supreme Court rejected uh, Jack Smith's appeal, and so now the case goes before a three-judge panel in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. Of course, as it turns out, he's got two Biden appointees and one George H.W. Bush appointee on the panel. I'm sure these are all members of Team Trump, you might say. So it isn't really as good as it looks because, of course, the issue is some kind of a idea that basically the actions that Trump took after the 2020 election were part of his presidential duties. And the way he seems to be framing it is that he had a role in making sure that the election fraud wouldn't be allowed to stand or something like that. The other side is going to claim that's just him as a candidate trying to win an election, and that they weren't any quote improper actions, if there were any, were not covered by presidential immunity. Now, presidential immunity means that essentially the president isn't, has a great degree of discretion in his official duties as president. Otherwise, he couldn't function because he'd be sued right and left from every angle and couldn't even function. So that's the same way that a lot of other things, like if you become a victim of crime, you can't really go sue the police department because it didn't stop the criminal or something, that kind of stuff. So that's sort of a principle applied to the presidency. So anyhow, that gives you an idea of what the issues are, but of course the outcome I think is pretty clear cut, and that is the court is going to ultimately rule against Trump. That is, the appellate court will, because it's, as I say, it's a 2-to-1 Democrat panel, and the Republican isn't the Trump appointee. Is remember that. So this whole thing, anybody that's establishment type is probably going to be a little bit adverse, I think, here, maybe. So anyway, that's kind of the way it's looking, and of course, it'll be interesting to see how quickly this panel will hear. They did receive a brief from some pro-Trump forces that filed a brief in his favor. So I think they're going through the motions, at least, of looking objective about it. They don't want it to look like it's too biased. So, by the way, if you like these videos, please give me a like. We need more people. We need more followers. Go ahead, if you're on Google, go ahead and subscribe. So anyhow, but anyway, so I don't look for a positive outcome here at all. That would be really shocking, I think. And I think even if he wins this, it would only eliminate 2 of the 4 charges that they have in the D.C. circuit. So, but remember that the Trump strategy here is delay, delay, delay. The idea is that the election would be over with before there could be a conviction in any of these cases. That's obviously what he's hoping for. And we'll see if he can pull that off. And of course, what Jack Smith, the very biased special prosecutor here, is trying to do is get a really early trial and a conviction, so he would actually be reporting to prison, let's say sometime after Labor Day, so that he couldn't really campaign in the fall. At least he couldn't go on the campaign trail. I guess he could. And so that's what's going on here. And of course, if you can get the first trial out of the way, then you can go ahead and have the second trial on schedule sometime around Memorial Day, which is the one down in Florida. And of course, there's also the Georgia thing, which we don't know when that will be, but presumably the federal cases will take precedence, presumably over the Georgia trial. I don't think he can be president more than one trial at a time. So that's the kind of lawfare that they're waging against Trump. And so this is so now we get into another interesting issue here, which is, okay, the Supreme Court decided not to hear it now, so they're not speeding it up. But then again, what is their real motivation? One motivation would be to have the decision made by the appellate court, which is I'm almost certain to be adverse to Trump considering its composition, and in that case, he would they would simply decline to hear his appeal at that point, and then let the trial go forward. On the other hand, they could decide to hear his appeal, and they could simply put it on the docket, and they could just rule fairly expeditiously, but that might push the trial back to, let's say, maybe the summer, maybe around the time of the convention or something, you know. Or another interesting move, if the precedent they'd have to set would be one that would be that they wouldn't want to set, perhaps. What they could do, I don't know if they go this far, but they could just set on it and not rule until after the election, and then at the appropriate moment they could issue a ruling, maybe after Trump would be hypothetically might be inaugurated, to rule against him. But at that point, he would have his own attorney general, presumably, who would presumably maybe just drop the charges and fire the special counsel. So that's a positive Trump scenario. So I often, in the past, I've given negative scenarios, of course, because I tend to think they're more probable, just considering how the system is rigged against us on this whole thing. And I mean, because we see that while no reasonable prosecutor, as I've said in previous videos, would ever consider filing criminal charges against Hillary Clinton for what she did, in the case of Trump and the document issue, they got like 37 charges or something like that, any one of which could put you away for quite a while. So, you know, this is a sort of system that he's entangled in right now. Not to mention this case in Georgia. And I have about little faith in the Georgia courts doing the right thing, actually. I think that the whole history of the South has been such that the Georgia leadership is kind of kowtowed to the regime, if you will. I mean, I've seen a lot of cases. I would just be surprised if we would actually see them, the Georgia Supreme Court, just strike down that RICO case against Trump. I mean, the idea of running a RICO case, seriously, but I mean, I think that is just really outrageous, because essentially he could be found guilty in a RICO case in which he had nothing to do with the people that actually broke the law. If it was ruled that they were all part of a similar conspiracy or something, and calling it a conspiracy. And so that's why we'll have to see how that goes also. But that's the kind of lawfare that's being waged against Trump. You know, lawfare like being done in the court system, and and wars and warfare. Put it together, you get lawfare, right? And that's what this is. So at any rate, that's kind of where we are right now, and we'll have to see how long this case lasts. I mean, if Trump could conceivably tie these things up in delaying procedures until after the election, then given his poll numbers, he just might pull off a win. And that would be certainly far preferable to any Democrat, whether it be Biden or some replacement Democrat, Kamala Harris or Newsom out in California. Meanwhile, there's something else brewing, of course, as we all know, that decision that was made that we've discussed earlier in Colorado, and Trump is apparently planning on appealing that to the Supreme Court. Now, it'll be interesting to see, do they take that case outright and go around the appellate court, or do they simply refer it to the appellate court that's out there in Colorado, I believe, is where it's based. I forget what the number of that one is, but it's the one that Gorsuch came off of to go to the Supreme Court. And if they hear the case, probably they'll rule in Trump's favor, but of course that won't shut down all the cases that aren't in their circuit, but would set a precedent. And I hear that Newsom doesn't even want to pursue this in California, although his lieutenant governor wants to. Although, I don't know. I think from his point of view, I think he feels like he damages political viability for a future presidential run, whether it be in 2024 or 2028. And it's pretty obvious he has his eye on that. And he knows that what they're doing there is completely goofy. Interesting enough, apparently Russia and Putin did the same thing with one of their candidates. They ruled that this anti-war candidate over there couldn't run in Russia. So it looks like the Democrats over here are doing the same kind of thing that Putin does. They'll love that one. But at any rate, so that'll be interesting to see whether they take that case directly. The advantage of them taking it directly would be that it would put the kibosh on all these efforts nationwide in one fell swoop and just shut this down, this whole idea of using this 14th Amendment bogus argument. And they might want to do that just to get rid of that, so that, ideas where certain Republicans said, well, we could maybe take Biden off the ballot for all the horribly illegal things he's doing on the border, which I think has more merit actually than anything about January 6th has. But at any rate, so that's kind of the way things are going on that, and we'll just have to keep our eye on it as the new year dawns and see how it goes. So I'll be posting this on Rumble as always, and as well as here, of course, on YouTube. And the addresses of my social media accounts are in the description below. And this will be all for now. Until next time.